The quiet park erupted when the racist bully yelled at a young artist sketching nearby, spitting venomous words about their heritage. Families stared, some whispering, others filming, as the artist shrank under the attack, brushes trembling. Morgan Freeman, reading on a nearby bench, closed his book with a deliberate thud, the sound cutting through the chaos. His eyes, sharp and steady, met the bully's, and the air grew thick with tension. The bully laughed, loud and cruel, oblivious to the storm brewing in Freeman's calm. No one knew what he'd say next. The artist clutched their sketchbook, eyes darting, searching for escape. But the bully pressed closer, voice rising. "Go back where you came from," he sneered, words slicing through the warm afternoon air. A mother pulled her child closer, whispering, "Should we call someone?" Phones stayed raised, capturing every second, tension crackling like static. Freeman's fingers tightened on his book, his jaw set, but his face remained unreadable. The crowd held its breath, waiting for something, anything. The bully noticed Freeman now, smirking, emboldened by the silence, thinking it meant weakness. "What are you looking at, old man?" he barked, stepping closer, chest puffed out. Freeman didn't flinch, didn't blink, his gaze steady as a mountain, unshakable. A young couple nearby whispered, "That's Morgan Freeman," their voices tinged with awe. The bully scoffed, but a flicker of unease crossed his face. The park felt smaller, the tension electric, like a storm about to break. Freeman shifted slightly, his movements slow, deliberate, commanding attention without a word. The artist glanced at him, hope flickering in their tear-streaked eyes, but fear still held them frozen. The bully's laughter faltered, replaced by a nervous edge, as Freeman's silence grew louder than words. A woman in the crowd whispered, "He's gonna say something," her voice trembling with anticipation. The bully shifted, suddenly aware of the eyes on him, the weight of the moment. Freeman's calm was a weapon, and the bully felt its edge. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the grass, but the heat of the moment burned hotter. Freeman's book rested on his lap now, forgotten, his hands folded, steady as stone. The bully tried to laugh again, but it came out weak, hollow, like a child caught in a lie. The crowd leaned in, phones still raised, hearts pounding, sensing a shift. Freeman's eyes never left the bully, piercing, unyielding, as if seeing through him. The world listened, waiting for his voice. The artist's sketchbook slipped slightly, pages fluttering, but they held it tight, eyes locked on Freeman. The bully's bravado cracked, his voice quieter now, but still defiant. "You got something to say?" Freeman tilted his head, just slightly, a gesture so small yet so powerful. The crowd gasped softly, the tension unbearable, the moment teetering on the edge. No one knew what he'd say next, but everyone knew it would change everything. Chapter 2. Escalation. Freeman's voice finally broke the silence, low and steady, like thunder rolling in the distance. "You're loud," he said, each word deliberate, cutting through the bully's bravado like a knife. The bully froze, caught off guard, his smirk faltering as Freeman's words hung in the air. The crowd leaned closer, phones trembling in their hands, capturing every second. A child whispered, "He's talking," and their parent shushed them, eyes wide. The park felt smaller, the tension thicker, as Freeman's calm began to unravel the bully. The bully tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky, nervous, his confidence crumbling. "What's that supposed to mean?" he snapped, voice cracking, but Freeman didn't blink, didn't flinch. "Loud," Freeman repeated, his tone even, but empty. The words landed like a punch and gasps echoed through the crowd. A woman clutched her chest, whispering, "He's right," as others nodded, eyes locked on Freeman. The artist's hands steadied slightly, their breathing slowing, hope flickering in their gaze. The bully's face flushed red, anger flaring, but Freeman's calm was unshakable, a wall he couldn't break. "You don't know me," the bully shouted, stepping closer, pointing a finger at Freeman, voice rising. Freeman tilted his head again, just slightly, his eyes piercing, seeing through the bully's rage. "I know enough," Freeman said, his voice steady, like a river smoothing jagged stones. The crowd murmured, some filming, others whispering, "He's not backing down." The tension crackled, electric, alive. The bully doubled down, desperate to regain control, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you're better than me?" he sneered, mocking Freeman's calm, his age, his presence. The artist flinched, their sketchbook slipping again, but Freeman didn't move, didn't react, his silence louder than the bully's shouts. A young man in the crowd whispered, "He's losing it," and his friend nodded, eyes wide. Freeman's gaze remained steady, unyielding, a mirror reflecting the bully's ugliness back at him. The park felt like a stage, and Freeman held the spotlight. Freeman leaned forward slightly, just enough to shift the air, and the bully stepped back, instinctive, defensive. "You're angry," Freeman said, his voice low, almost gentle, but laced with steel. "But anger without purpose is just noise." The crowd gasped, some nodding, others filming, their phones shaking in their hands. A woman sobbed quietly, wiping her eyes, moved by Freeman's words. The bully's fists clenched, his face twisted, but Freeman's calm was a force, unrelenting, unshakable. The artist looked up, eyes wide, hope growing stronger. The bully tried one last time, his voice cracking, "You're nothing." But the words fell flat, weak, powerless. Freeman's eyes narrowed just slightly, and the crowd felt the shift, the moment teetering on the edge. "Nothing," Freeman said, his voice rising now, "is what you leave behind when you tear others down." Gasps rippled through the park, phones raised higher, capturing the moment. The bully's bravado shattered, his face pale, but Freeman wasn't done. The world listened, waiting for what came next. Chapter 3. Turning Point. Freeman's words hung in the air, heavy, like a truth too big to ignore, and the bully faltered, his fists unclenching. The crowd murmured, some whispering, "He's right," others filming, phones trembling in their hands. Freeman leaned back slightly, his gaze steady, but now there was a spark, a fire in his eyes. The artist clutched their sketchbook tighter, their breathing steadier, eyes locked on Freeman, hope blooming. The bully shifted, nervous, his bravado crumbling under Freeman's unyielding presence. The park felt electric, charged with anticipation, the moment shifting. Freeman's voice softened, but it carried weight, like a story unfolding, pulling everyone in. "I've seen anger like yours," he said, his tone calm, reflective, but piercing. "It's not strength, it's fear." The bully's face twisted, caught between rage and unease, but Freeman's words cut deeper, exposing him. A woman in the crowd whispered, "He's telling a story," her voice trembling with awe. Freeman's eyes never left the bully, steady, seeing through him, unraveling him. The tension peaked, the air thick with emotion, the crowd hanging on every word. The bully tried to interrupt, his voice weak. "You don't know me," but Freeman raised a hand, just slightly, silencing him. "I know enough," Freeman said, his voice steady, "because I've seen men like you before." The crowd gasped, some nodding, others filming, their phones shaking in their hands. Freeman's words were a mirror, reflecting the bully's ugliness back at him, and he couldn't escape it. The artist's eyes widened, their fear fading, replaced by awe, as Freeman's wisdom began to shift the narrative. The bully's confidence cracked, his voice quieter, defensive. Freeman leaned forward now, his presence commanding, his voice rising, steady, but powerful. "Fear of change, fear of difference," he said, each word deliberate. "But fear doesn't build, it destroys." The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping, others whispering, "He's right," their voices mingling with the tension. The bully's face paled, his hands trembling, his bravado shattered, replaced by doubt. Freeman's eyes softened, just slightly, but his gaze was unrelenting, a challenge, a lesson. The artist looked up, their sketchbook steady now, their fear replaced by strength. The bully tried to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "You're wrong," but it sounded hollow, desperate, powerless. Freeman tilted his head just slightly, his silence louder than words, letting the bully's weakness echo in the air. A young man in the crowd whispered, "He's done," and his friend nodded, eyes wide, filming every second. Freeman's words had shifted the narrative, turning the bully's rage into a mirror, exposing his fear. The crowd felt it, the tension peaking, the moment teetering on the edge. Freeman's calm was a force, and the bully felt its weight. Freeman paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the bully's doubt grow, letting the crowd absorb the moment. The artist's eyes shone, tears of relief now, their hands steady, their fear gone. The bully shifted, his face pale, his voice gone, his bravado shattered, replaced by silence. Freeman's gaze remained steady, unyielding, a beacon of strength, of wisdom, of truth. The crowd leaned in, phones raised, hearts pounding, sensing the shift, the turning point. What happened next stunned everyone. Chapter 4. Climax. Freeman's silence stretched, heavy like a storm about to break, and the bully shrank under its weight, his bravado gone. The crowd leaned in, phones raised, hearts pounding, sensing the moment teetering on the edge. Freeman's voice returned, low and steady, like a river smoothing jagged stones, but now it carried fire. "Pain is a teacher," he said, each word deliberate, piercing. "But you've learned nothing." The bully's face twisted, caught between rage and shame, but Freeman's words cut deeper, exposing him. Gasps rippled through the park, the tension electric, the moment alive. The artist's eyes shone, tears of relief now, their hands steady, their fear replaced by strength, inspired by Freeman. The bully tried to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "You're wrong," but it sounded hollow, desperate, powerless. Freeman leaned forward, his presence commanding, his gaze unyielding, a mirror reflecting the bully's ugliness back at him. "You tear down," Freeman said, his voice rising, "because you're afraid to build." The crowd erupted, some clapping, others whispering. "He's right," their voices mingling with the tension. The bully's hands trembled, his face pale, his confidence shattered. Freeman's words landed like a blow, and the bully staggered back, his bravado shattered, replaced by silence, by doubt. The artist looked up, their sketchbook steady now, their eyes locked on Freeman, hope blooming brighter. A woman in the crowd sobbed quietly, wiping her eyes, moved by Freeman's wisdom, his strength, his truth. Freeman's gaze softened, just slightly, but his voice remained steady, powerful, unrelenting. "You're afraid," Freeman said, "because difference reminds you of your own emptiness." The crowd gasped, phones trembling, capturing every second, the moment shifting. The bully's face paled, his fists unclenching, his voice gone, his rage replaced by silence, by shame, by reflection. Freeman leaned back, his presence still commanding, his calm a force, a beacon of strength, of wisdom, of truth. The crowd erupted, applause breaking out, some cheering, others filming, their phones shaking in their hands. The artist's smile grew, their fear gone, replaced by awe, by gratitude, by strength. Freeman's words had shifted the narrative, turning the bully's rage into a mirror, exposing his fear. The park felt electric, charged with emotion, with change. Freeman paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the bully's doubt grow, letting the crowd absorb the moment. The bully's head bowed, just slightly, his bravado shattered, his ugliness exposed, his silence deafening. A young man in the crowd whispered, "He's done." And his friend nodded, eyes wide, filming every second, capturing the shift. Freeman's gaze remained steady, unyielding, a challenge, a lesson, a truth. The crowd leaned in, hearts pounding, sensing the change, the climax, the transformation. Freeman's calm had won, but one question remained. The artist looked at Freeman, their eyes shining, their hands steady, their fear replaced by strength, by hope. The bully stood there, silent, humbled, his rage gone, his shame heavy, his reflection beginning. Freeman's words had broken him, not with violence, but with truth, with wisdom, with power. The crowd felt it, the tension shifting, the moment transforming, the park alive with change. Freeman's gaze softened, just slightly, but his presence remained. A beacon, a force, a light. But one question lingered, unanswered, hanging in the air. Chapter 5. Resolution. Freeman's gaze softened, his presence still commanding, but now there was warmth, a light in his eyes. The bully stood there, silent, humbled, his head bowed, his shame heavy, his reflection beginning. Freeman's voice returned low and steady, like a river smoothing jagged stones, but now it carried hope. "Difference is strength," he said, each word deliberate, piercing, "and it's what builds us." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others filming, their phones trembling in their hands. The artist's smile grew, their eyes shining, inspired by Freeman's wisdom, his truth. Freeman leaned forward slightly, his voice rising, steady but powerful, pulling everyone in. "Pain can teach," he said, "but only if you listen, only if you learn." The bully's hands unclenched, his face pale, his silence heavy. But now there was a flicker, a spark of change. A woman in the crowd whispered, "He's listening," her voice trembling with awe, moved by Freeman's words. Freeman's eyes met the bully's, steady, unyielding, but now there was compassion, a challenge, a lesson. The park felt electric, charged with emotion, with hope, with change. The artist looked at Freeman, their sketchbook steady, their fear gone, replaced by strength, by gratitude, by hope. Freeman's gaze shifted to them, his smile small but warm, his presence a beacon, a light, a force. "You," Freeman said, his voice steady, "your art, your story, it matters." The artist's eyes shone, tears of relief now, their hands steady, their smile growing, inspired by Freeman's words. The crowd erupted, applause breaking out, some cheering, others filming, capturing the moment, the shift, the transformation. Freeman's wisdom had won, and the park felt alive with change. Freeman leaned back, his presence still commanding, his calm a force, a beacon of strength, of wisdom, of truth. The bully stood there, silent, humbled, his rage gone, his shame heavy. But now there was reflection, a beginning, a change. Freeman's voice softened, but it carried weight, like a story unfolding, pulling everyone in. "We build together," he said, "or we fall apart." The crowd gasped, some nodding, others whispering, "He's right," their voices mingling with the tension, with the hope. Freeman's words lingered, heavy, like a truth too big to ignore. Freeman paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the moment settle, letting the crowd absorb the change. The artist looked at Freeman, their eyes shining, their hands steady, their fear replaced by strength, by hope, by gratitude. The bully's head bowed just slightly, his silence heavy, but now there was reflection, a spark, a beginning. Freeman's gaze remained steady, unyielding, a challenge, a lesson, a truth. The crowd leaned in, phones raised, hearts pounding, sensing the shift, the resolution, the inspiration. Freeman's calm had won, and the park felt transformed, alive with possibility. Freeman's voice returned, low and steady like thunder rolling in the distance, but now it carried a call, a message, a CTA. "Inspired," he said, his eyes meeting the crowd, steady, warm, inviting. "Like, comment, subscribe. Share what moved you, share your story, share your strength." The crowd erupted, applause breaking out, some cheering, others filming, capturing the moment, the message, the change. Freeman's smile grew, small but warm, his presence a beacon, a light, a force. The artist smiled, their sketchbook steady, their fear gone, replaced by hope, by strength, by inspiration.